Thank you, Jeff. Oh, yes. Yes, please, applause. Thank you. My money's on Susan, by the way, if you're duking it out. But, okay, my name's Ben Wiehe. I'll start there. I work at the MIT Museum. And my job title is Manager of the Science Festival Alliance. That's been my job title since 2009. It's hard to, I kind of want to like just cede my time to Lou. Because, I've found it fantastic to listen to her. I have deep respect for Lou. I've been adjacent to her for a while now. And she knows things. And I don't know that, I'm not sure that's why I was asked to stand in front of you. Because when Lou speaks about this, she has answers for your questions. And I think I'm just here to be sort of like the curmudgeon who says, it's a hot mess, don't do it. So I have like 4 different versions of what I was going to say. I've really struggled with this because it's sort of been my life for quite a while, to be near the center of gravity of something that looks like, I wouldn't call it a community practice. It's called the Science Festival Alliance. We were intentional with that name. So I have either not much to say or just way too much. So basically I've come down to just like, well, then I'll just make it all about me. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about my trajectory as the Science Festival Alliance manager, my perspective on the practicalities, which I think is like a code for like the hard parts. And the messy parts. So the Science Festival Alliance started with an NSF grant. So we came out of the gates with a concept that was around a particular format of a festival. For those, I'm not going to get into what festivals are, et cetera. They're of, for, by the community. They massive celebrations, regional celebrations of science. If you've ever been to any festival, think of that, not make it for science. We had this clear format. We had a $3 million grant. We had the structure was already there of who was going to be working on this. We had somebody with a job title that was supposedly going to manage the alliance part. We had these guiding principles, but they weren't very prescriptive. It was meant to be open-ended. Every community needs to figure out what it is to celebrate science. So it wasn't about stamping out a product. We had multiple full-time equivalents working on the project at 4 different institutions. We had big travel budgets and meeting budgets. Even with all of this, I remember just feeling so under-resourced, which sounds ridiculous. $3 million and all these people working on these incredible institutions with advocates at the highest echelons of science. But we quickly assembled a machine to get 3 festivals up and running: Philadelphia, San Diego, San Francisco. But others were already wanting in, or at least they thought they did. They were kind of in we still have this challenge of like, we're not science fairs, we're science festivals. That was like, even that is where we're starting. Those early years were all-consuming. That's a phrase I was like, well, if I was to sum it up, it's all-consuming. I felt like we had a very brief window of opportunity. We had the potential of this attention, seizing a moment. We had this 3-year grant. I was hired 6 months. It had already bled out 6 months when I was hired, and ostensibly the thing started. So I and a few others just threw ourselves completely into this in a frenzy. And I remember thinking, this is insane. Why am I at the White House right now? What is happening? But we're building something. And once it's built, then we're going to have this thing, and we're going to be able to do so many exciting things with it. So at the end of 3 years, we had done something, right? We had something like a dozen festivals that we could count as sort of being in the fold, whatever that meant. We had done our best to maximize attention. We had, like New York Times coverage, USA Today. We had incredible images from the festival, so we had this like repository to help tell our story. We had eyebrow-raising evaluation results, and we had eye-watering anecdotes, just the most touching, moving, passionate stories, and we had zeal. We were like zealots about this. But even with all that, like suddenly I'm faced with like the most uncertain time. Were the festivals going to continue to be of interest? What was going on? Was this just some like weird passing fad? Would the best support for them be to like really pour effort into like building out a network or a community practice or whatever? What is this thing too? And oh, by the way, that funding clock is really close to alarm bells going off. Meaning, and when that goes off, the whole thing just unravels. Okay. So we need to get, so we need to get the funding. Who would get that funding? Where would it come from? And we didn't really talk about it much, but underlying all this, who owns this thing anyways? Put that aside, don't deal with that. So 2012, after all this effort and throwing not just myself, but several people putting all they had into this, it was a very difficult year. Like, it was supposed to be crowning, like, we've done this, like, high fives all around. There were so many meetings as we tried to sort out internally what the Science Festival Alliance was, what it should be, how to realistically make the most of its potential. Key personnel were leaving. Some personalities were proving problematic and needed to be, I'll say, managed out. Which is so hard for, I'm kind of a nice guy, I don't know. I'm not conflict averse, but it's just, you know, I don't want to tell you, but you gotta. The amazing relationships that we'd built up were growing precarious. And, you know, one little learning point, the best relationships are created under extreme duress. And we had gone through that crucible there, but these were people who were very action-oriented, all about taking action on a grand scale. And they all had, except for me, festivals of their own churning away. Like, they were like, hey, we've got 40,000 people coming to this location next Sunday. So, like, sitting down to talk about what the Science Festival Alliance might be and where we might be headed as a group, don't really have time for that. And so your meetings are becoming a little bit boring, and I, you know, I remember worrying that I was losing traction as a manager, if I even was a manager, and that the whole thing was really, you know, coming possibly to loose ends. I distinctly remember thinking, and maybe this is a Lou moment, that the problem was, at that time, our real constraints were forcing a top-down approach to issues that would be much better addressed from the bottom up. And part of that was a draft after a draft after a draft of a potential NSF bid was piling up on my desk. And we had these competing visions. We tried putting working committees in place. We tried to, I think the uncertainty made some people anxious enough. We tried to formalize things with strategic plans, a membership program, but this just led to more items needing consensus. Consensus sometimes is lowest common denominator. One person even went so far as to draft a constitution that would govern the Science Festival Alliance. I mean, we were just kind of like grasping at these things. I found an old file cabinet on campus and dragged it physically down the sidewalk to my office to put next to my desk, which was a door that I had flipped over on its side in 2009, because I only had 3 years here anyways. And through all this, the phone calls with festivals are still going on. New festival organizers are really want to talk about these conversations that we had 3 years ago, and the older festival organizers have completely new set of issues that they want to talk about. And in the midst of all this, I find myself going to Cairo with State Department funding, and I'm supposed to be generating a Science Festival Alliance in the Middle East during the Arab Spring, and I'm like, what? Why did that happen? Well, because, you know, because basically I couldn't let any opportunity go by. Like, I had to seize everything. All right, well, we got the NSF grant. We asked for $3 million, they said $2 million. So that was a little bit painful, because we had worked on this thing. we didn't just put 3 in because it was a cap. We wanted more. At the same time, we got our first major grant from a private foundation. I hired Julie Fouché, and I built her a desk in similar style to mine because we only could count on having her for 2 years. But now this all looks like really good news, right? I mean, now 2012, well, that was painful, but boy, 2013, this is gonna be amazing. Except there's no excuses. The funding clock's even tighter now. And I mean, basically, it's just like, all right, well, now it's time to throw everything I have into this project again, like I was just doing. I'm just going to up that. And I felt like I'd never been busier. We went from 11 festivals to 30 in a year's time, and we put a real membership thing in place. It was light, and I don't know if it makes everybody happy, but we have it. The new members have like really different needs than the old guard of festivals that have been around for a whole like 2 or 3 years. And we had staff at 8 institutions around the country remunerated in some way to work on this network, which you think is incredible. It really was. It was so heartening to see people do this, especially because like as the, I'm just gonna do that air quote thing, sorry, manager of this, that was my job title, but I mean, none of these people actually reported to me or to anyone else that was responsible in some way for the project. So soft power is all I had, and I don't know that I can even call it that. So as things grow at this crazy pace, it layers up different expectations of how I should be spending my time. I had to go silent on some relationships simply out of like saying like I have to rely on that to be there. And soon I had people saying, "What do you even do anymore?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I've been so busy. That's why we haven't talked." But I realized that I was not documenting sufficiently, not getting, there's these shortfalls as it just piled up and became overwhelming. And now we're like $8 million later, going into our 10th year, and we've evolved in so many ways. And festivals, like, I don't have to explain that they're not science fairs anymore. I mean, we achieved that. And the things that I've seen, like, now my burden is in part like, I want to grab everybody by the lapels and be like, do you know what's happened out there? Because we haven't, as much as we've tried to capture it, we never really can convey this heart-moving experiences that are happening in communities across the United States. And it seems like we recently had just last weekend, had a lunch with a couple people, and we were just congratulating ourselves, rightly so, because just gotta try to take a moment to do that. And like later that afternoon, I got my phone's ringing right now, but like later that afternoon, like I got a couple of emails from 2 festivals that were like worried about the behavior of another festival. And the next day I had 2 financial reports due, and those are now overdue. And I also was laying out the application process to bring 12 new festivals into the network. And I was just like, wow, I'm right back where I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, I'm at this spot, I've got like 2 or 3 years of funding right now, and I just need to throw everything I have into this next window of opportunity where like, because now is the time when like these things are, we're gonna build something at the end of this 3 years, it's gonna be so incredible. So I think I'll just leave it at that. That's a practice. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful to anyone, but.
Hello. Oh, hi Ben.
Hey,
so
man.
I know. I've
You've
followed
watched
you.
this insanity. Yep.
Yeah, for 10
unfold.
years. So one of the things that just sounds so familiar, and I'm sure it is to Genie and a bunch of people, is like where we have good examples of communities of practice or organizations, it often feels like there is one or a small number of individuals who are basically like burning the candle at 6 ends, and they're soon going to drop down and have a heart attack. Or in practice, what actually happens is...
My doctor said it's because my 3-year-old's really heavy. Yeah. And it's like muscle, it's not my heart.
Yep.
So I'm okay.
Yeah, my doctor just laughs at me now. But so, in fact, people don't have heart attacks. People, as you said, they leave because...
It's totally dynamic, yeah.
You need
it's
a
always
life.
changing.
So, I guess partly for you, partly for Lou, like, what happens when people suddenly decide they don't want to die at 34 from, cardiac arrest?
Well, I'm not so. I'm pretty okay with like putting my ego aside on this. Like, I don't think that I'm the essential ingredient that makes anything happen. I was gonna say all this, and then like just anything at all. But there are key moments in the development of this where I felt, okay, I like my job. I just want to say that. I do. And I love the experience that I've had over the past 10 years with this project. And there are other projects that I also work on, which is, that's another thing, is that many of the people involved in this you're totally depending on, it's completely not their job at all. But I definitely have felt like there are many, many moments where I felt like trapped a little bit. Not trapped in a like, I want to get out, but like, ooh, if I did want to get out, I'm not sure I could without things kind of feeling like they might implode a little bit. I don't know how to reinforce that. We've put together these, at various times when the anxiety built and was really palpable, we put together different kinds of structures to deal with it at that moment. Most recently, there was a Science Festival Alliance Council, and I thought if I called it a council and not a committee, it would feel like something that, had more responsibility. And people are enthusiastic about it, but it's sort of like, it served a purpose for a couple of years, and then like we had our summit in this past June, and we decided, we don't really need to meet the council. I think that served its purpose. So you just kind of like create organizational structures for the demands of the moment, and the demands of the moment can be really fleeting. I'm glad we didn't adopt the Constitution.
Yeah, and I would say, so I'd echo the first thing that Ben said, which is that essentially, if you do end up successfully building a community, the idea is that the roles and responsibilities are shared. If we actually build this together, no one person ought to be the weakest link. And we think about this a lot from the perspective of community management. So I didn't mention this in my talk, but often, when we set up these communities, there is somebody who is designated in that role of coalescing folks together, greasing the wheels, ensuring, that we remember to reconvene, that we do the things that we do. And that role evolves over time. If your community is healthy and it's actually progressing through a life cycle and through to stages of maturity, then the pressure should ease on that community manager. And yes, they're still doing a job, but everything should not, the success or failure of that community should not depend on the people convening it solely. And another thing that this gets at that I just also want us to bear in mind is echoes what Genie was saying earlier about acknowledging all the support staff that makes things happen. This role of convening communities is an invisible leadership role, right? It's not about one person or a group of people standing up and saying, hey, here's what I think we should do, and we're going to be the ones that make sure it all gets done all the time. And so, everybody being aware of the fact that there is value being created there, even if this is not leadership in a very front and center way, I think is important.
It might be helpful to point out that I do oftentimes quip that I don't do anything. And by that, I mean, I don't actually organize a festival myself. I don't have skin in that game. My job is to, not like some godlike figure, but like pull myself out and look across the landscape so I have some feeling for where the center of gravity of the group might be. And I can look after those that like don't have the same power in the community. Kishore could tell the same story.
I know this story well. Hi, I'm Kishore.
Yeah.
I get that it was hard. I know it was hard because I was in some of those stories you were telling. Mm-hmm. But I did not make the Constitution. I did not. I was not part of the Constitution. I vetoed the Constitution.
We were aligned in that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I have kept those emails. I get that it was really hard. Was it worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's worth it even even at moments when I thought it was all going to collapse because of some foolish thing that I had neglected. It's still worth it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really helps that we all work in a field that is so inspiring. I mean, it's just inspiring. Our product is inspiring. If it's, well, it ought to be. And so that really helps. I mean, the festivals are absolutely amazing. And the thing that, yeah, so I could talk about that. I think that's in the end, like, I mean, it's just, there's this like infinite wellspring of passion for just keeping this going and spreading it because it's so inspiring to me.
This is, it's not a question, it's probably not a comment, but yeah, we're listening to you and we have said when you had hard time and we're happy that you had successes and you have an organization that's going on. It just made the feelings that I was getting in the last couple hours, days, yesterday, even deeper. Most of us are working in much smaller programs, and I've heard this weekend of great, gorgeous programs that will all die when the guy or woman is doing it will leave. They can't even have a vice person to do it because they don't have funding. They put their heart and soul into it, and as soon as they leave, it will die. And your story, which is a great success story, is just making it even more apparent that if you don't have an organization of 12 people and you don't have funding and you put in your summer salary into doing the summer camp, it's going to die when you leave. And how do we make it sustainable? I've heard so many programs that were just gorgeous and died.
Well, I mean, partly it is also just sort of, isn't it also the nature of everything that we do is that it's just very fleeting? Like, I mean, and dynamic, and that like this work just will never end is another way to flip that around. Well, the festivals, I mean, we've been very lucky, but the festival's not exactly brick and mortar. They can just, not a year goes by when I'm not having a crisis conversation with some festival organizer about like, I don't know how we're going to do it this year. So I think there's something about like this, for example, this meeting, I know a lot of people are here. I've met a lot of people. I've had a lot of inspiring conversations and great conversations here. There's not been enough time. I wish that this will keep going. But at the same time, a lot of the conversations here mirror conversations I've had at other meetings. This is the fourth meeting I've been to in 2 weeks. And I've seen a lot of other people at this meeting, at those other meetings. Those other meetings are helpful. But why would this meet again? Well, because we continue to have, we live in a dynamic situation. New members can come and go. The issues that the community is trying to address are going to continually be evolving. So it's sort of like I'm just coming to peace with the knowledge that like, I'm not a construction worker. Like I don't go build a building and then go like, right, there it is, and that's gonna last there for generations, or 35 years is the current standard actually. But so that we work in a different, like softer, the product of our work is softer than that. And it just needs constant attention. So if a program dies, I don't, sorry, I couldn't hear that.
You said if the program in Florida dies, there will be one in Kansas. But for the one in Florida, I know, it's just a comment. It's just, the more I talk to people and the more I hear about beautiful programs, I'm like, what's going to happen when this woman retires?
There's also part of me that like is another side to that too. Sorry to just like keep finding silver linings or way to reframe that positively. Is now I'm no longer a curmudgeon. Is that if you look at our historical, I mean, if taking a more historical stance on the world would do the entire United States a world of good. So looking just a little bit back, you can see, first of all, you can see enormous improvement and evolution in positive directions, but you can also you just like talk to a real old timer. And you start to hear like, oh yeah, that's just like that thing we did in 1984, and that thing in remember that in the 70s we had this other program that was just so amazing. And so, with the festivals, people there's some people who get really fixated on origin stories, especially those who think that they are the origin. And part of my job is to poke holes in that. Actually, it's not my job. It's my personality. Is to poke holes in those kinds of that notion, because, my God, where did science festivals come from? Who started this thing? And my reply is not meant to be facetious, but like I say, I kind of peg it to like maybe dawn of agriculture. To put it there comfortably, that like people have been coming together to celebrate how technology and knowledge makes them who they are. Let's put it. There's like World's Fairs and all that, but you just go way back. It's a natural human endeavor. We've been doing this for forever.
Oh, am I on? Okay. Hi, I'm Amanda Smith. I was asked to speak about 100K and 10. First of all, I'm from Penn State Center for Science in the Schools, and I'm the representative for the university. And 100K and 10, if you're not aware of it, is a national organization that has about 250 members of it so far, and they're always growing. But they have a really nice structure where they've divided into project teams to tackle varying issues across STEM education and outreach. And Talia, the CEO, was supposed to be here today but couldn't be. But if you'd like to find out more information, I'm always happy to share it on the Slack channel and give you more information. But the structure is really nice because it can't just take one person to manage all of it. It's going to take a village, and how they've divided project teams has been really, really nice. And they've spent a lot of time mapping out the grand challenges in STEM education. And it's public now, and it's called, I believe it's called like Grand Challenges 100kand10.org. But they're really looking at all the issues of getting highly qualified, over 100,000 qualified STEM-ready educators by the next 10 years. And so 2022 is the date that they're up. And they were originally funded by the Obama administration, and the Clinton initiative also funds them heavily as well. But I think it's definitely a great organization to look at as far as structure and how we might be able to fold in and to learn more about those grand challenges, and maybe where does science outreach also fold into that dynamic as well. So, yeah.